When it comes to Arena, wildcards is that precious currency that you can use to craft the cards you are missing in your collection or for that particular deck you are building. In today's video, I'm going to be diving into wildcards, what they are, how to craft them, and go about using them in the Arena client, and some of the best ways to go about farming them and acquiring them as quickly as possible in an efficient way. Hey everybody, it's Scar TV coming at you with another Magic the Gathering video. If you like the video, hit that like button. It definitely helps out a lot. If you're new here, want to know videos on the channel, hit that subscribe button. But with that being said, let's just dive in the video and let's start talking about it. The first big question you may have, being a newer player or someone jumping into the Arena client for the first time, is what wildcards are and how we go about using them. Wildcards essentially are a currency that we use to exchange for the cards we may be missing from our deck and other things in our collection as a whole. We exchange them at a one-to-one currency, and they do come in various rarities. They have similar rarities to the Magic cards you do see in your collection as a whole. There are commons, uncommons, rares, and mythics, and the colors will kind of be similar to that symbol that corresponds to those rarities of the cards. You also have a chance of acquiring wildcards as you open packs in the MTG Arena client, but we'll dive into that in a little bit. Now, the next question you may have with wildcards is actually how you go about redeeming them. And there's actually a pretty straightforward way to redeeming them for a one-to-one ratio when it comes to crafting and things like that. The first thing you need to do is jump into your decks list. If you're trying to build a particular deck or trying to, craft a particular card, you can do one of two things. You can physically jump into a deck you're looking to craft, or you can jump directly into your collection by clicking your collection tab here at the bottom. Going into your collection, you can do one of two things. You can go about crafting a particular card you may want more copies of that you want to add to a deck that you may not have that many copies of. So, for example, if we wanted to go about crafting, a particular card in our collection, let's just say Guide Invoice, being a new card from Strixhaven that I don't own it. I only own one copy of. We can first click on Guide Invoice. We can click on Guide Invoice where it shows the card. Up top here, this shows how many copies we do have in our collection here. So we only have one copy. We click on it. And down here below, you'll see a button that says Craft. So we can go about individually crafting our one additional copy by exchanging our one common currency. Now we have 3. Or what we could do if we want to have a full set, we can go all the way to the 4, and it will make us, mass craft the last 2 that we need to complete the whole set. So we can click that. Boom, there we go. Now we have 4 copies of Guide Invoice. The craft button now goes away. We now have a complete set of crafted Guide Invoice. The same thing goes for rares and mythics and uncommons. So if we want to craft, additional copies of, let's say, Giant Killer, we have 3 additional copies, 3 additional gold wild cards are for rares. We can go all the way to 4 copies. Click craft. There we go. Boom. We have Giant Killer. Another way we can go about crafting additional copies of cards maybe we don't even own yet because we haven't owned them in packs or have acquired through our various means of playing at Magic the Gathering. We click this button right at the top of the screen next to the plus where it says craft. What this will do is shows all our cards in MTG Arena from all the sets, depending on where you are, if you're in your collection or in a deck. It'll show you whether it's in standard, historic, or if you're in your collection, it'll just show all of Magic the Gathering. And if we want to craft a particular card that we don't own any copies of, it'll be grayed out here, so we can see all these grayed out cards that we don't own. And if we want to craft, let's just say Thrive in Hearth, we can click on Thrive in Hearth. We only have one currency here, which shows us how many common currency we have. And we can just click the craft button. And now essentially this card is now in our collection. So now the card is solid, and we do own now copies of this. And you can go various ways if you're trying to look for a particular card. You can search by color. You can search by searching in the thing here. Let's just say, let's go with the new set. Let's go with Lorehold Dragon. We can find our Lorehold Dragon right down here. We have 6 mythic wild cards. We can go ahead and craft a complete set if we really, really wanted to by redeeming all 4 mythics. And boom, there we now have a set of 4 Lorehold dragons. The next thing you can do is go into a particular deck that you're trying to craft, and you can do one of two things. If we were to click on a deck here, so if we go here, we can physically be in this screen. If there's a deck we want to craft by importing, we can physically click on the deck, go over this. If this is craftable with the wildcards we will have, this symbol will actually be this color here on the deck box. So we are, but if we hover over it, it will tell us what we're missing to complete the deck. We're missing 10 commons, 23 uncommons, 11 rares, and that's it. So if we were to have all those cards, we can also then go ahead and craft that deck. Another way of going about it is if you physically import the deck and you want to, craft the whole deck. I'm kind of blocking it, so let me shift where I'm at. We can go over to this button that's right above the done thing. It says craft all. Unfortunately, if we don't have enough wildcards, you'll get this error message, and it says we do not have enough wildcards to finish this deck. And you may be thinking to yourself, okay, what am I missing? And essentially, what you can do is you can check up here. You can tell you how many commons, uncommons, rares, and mythic wildcards you have in your collection while having physically click on the card to figure it out. If we were to have, all those wildcards, when we click that craft all button, our whole deck will fill in all the colors. It'll fill in solid, and it will add those to our collection. And then more than likely, the client itself will have them pop up probably in the front and all say new on them. Now, the next thing, the way you earn wildcards is actually from opening packs. Every time you open a pack, you will have a chance of getting wildcards in a pack. Let me just kind of buy a couple packs for an example. And what we do is when we open packs, we have a chance in our physical packs when we open them to actually acquire particular cards from that pack. So we click on the pack, it opens, and in the pack we have a chance to pin on the slot to actually get a wild card. It doesn't look like we actually got any wild cards here. I actually haven't bought any Strixhaven on this particular account. This is kind of like a more budget account I do have. So a lot of these cards are my first copy. So we didn't get any wild cards here. But the one thing you may notice is in the top right hand corner here is we actually have these trackers. Every time we open a pack, this little bar here will fill in. And once we fill the circle, this whole thing will then give us an uncommon wild card, and this other one will give us a rare wild card. With this, the other thing here is every, I think, third time or possibly fourth time this fills up, this will switch from being a rare wild card to then being a guaranteed mythic wild card. And these are guaranteed. The more you open packs, the more this will fill up and the more wild cards you acquire. Let's just try another pack and see if we get a wild card in it. Fingers crossed. All right, no wild card. Awesome. So my example didn't work out in my favor, but that's what happens when you do this live. But when it comes to opening packs, there's actually odds when it comes to getting wild cards in the packs we are opening. Out of every pack, out of every 3 common wild cards, there's a chance of getting 1 common wild card. So it's a 1 out of every 3 chance of seeing a common wild card. It'll be a wild card. For uncommons, is 1 out of every 5 uncommons will be a wild card. And rares and mythics, it's 1 out of every 24. So essentially, I don't know how Strixhaven works. It may not be a great example, but essentially 1 out of every 24 packs you open, this slot here will be a rare wild card or mythic wild card, which is definitely another good way of getting it, but it is a lot of chance. Now, this actually brings us up to our next point when it comes to opening wild cards, or getting wild cards from packs. And that is actually what is the best efficient way to go about farming these wild cards. And there's actually really not a clear way, like there's no way to really farm wild cards without really buying packs over and over again directly. But there is a system that the game has that it doesn't really tell you about, that you won't really know until you actually acquire it, and that is the vault system. Essentially, the vault system is a system that takes the excess uncommons and commons you open up in your packs, and it converts it into a progress bar that is hidden on the client itself, and it will actually tell you, how many more uncommon and common wild cards you need to eventually then unlock a vault, which essentially is a treasure chest icon that will pop up somewhere up top here. I think it actually pops up in between the gold and the lotus, and essentially that will open up at 100% once it reaches 100%, and you'll be guaranteed, I believe, 3 uncommon wildcards, 2 rare wildcards, and 1 mythic wildcard. And you may be thinking to yourself, okay, so that's still another system that I actually have to open packs to then kind of progress. And yes, that can be true, but there is an efficient way to kind of technically farm commons and uncommon cards, as well as rares and mythics as well, and that is actually playing limited play. So in limited play, essentially draft and or sealed. Sealed's not available at the moment because we just had the weekend as I'm recording, so they haven't actually added sealed back in as like a format you can just jump into on the random. I think sealed's a little bit more on the limited side, so it kind of cycles in and out with other game modes. But essentially, draft and sealed are the best 2 ways to kind of technically acquire more copies of commons and uncommons, because essentially you're just drafting from one set, and the more you draft from one set, the more times you'll see you'll get multiple copies of uncommons and commons. The first few times, especially if the set's new, you will probably get your first few copies of particular commons and uncommons. But the more you draft, you'll eventually start acquiring sets of those commons and uncommons, because certain things are very good. So there's always things that you're always drafting when you see them impact. So eventually, the excess then will go towards your vault progress. So drafting and playing sealed is probably the most efficient way. And if you eventually become good at drafting and sealed, you will eventually acquire enough currency that the draft and or sealed event will pay for itself. Meaning that you'll get to a certain point, whether I think in draft, I think it's 1600 at 5 wins. And I think sealed is roughly around the same thing. It's like around 5 or 6 wins. You'll then get enough gems from that, which then will pay for another entry. And just kind of continue the process over and over again. And you then eventually will add more, progress to your vault. And this does it in such big chunks too. The other thing that you can do is, the other thing too that happens when you get to a certain amount of wins, you'll get a certain amount of packs on top of it, and in a sense, you're getting 5 packs of Strixhaven, which on top of the packs you've opened up in the draft itself, you're just going to start building up your collection in that one particular set. Eventually, have excess copies that then progress to the vault, and then in turn, you'll get your wild cards that way. Now, I do have a video when it comes to crafting specific cards, and I think that does vary depending on what you're looking to build when it comes to decks you want to build, and or when it comes to direct cards that you're trying to craft when it comes to starting out. So I do have videos on the channel if you want to check out those. If you want to know how to get if you want to know more of the basics of when it comes to draft, I do also have a how to draft and what to draft video on the channel here as well. With that being said, guys, if you like the video, hit that like button. It definitely helps out a lot. If you're new here, want to post videos on the channel, hit that subscribe button. But until next time, I'll see you in the next Magic Gathering video.